So, in the Presbyterian Church in Canada, we have this glorious little document called the Book of Forms. And in certain circles, when you use the words the Book of Forms, some people inadvertently shiver. But it is the basis in the Presbyterian Church in Canada for much of our behavior. It is the basis for all church discipline. And it provides us with a model for conducting the business of the church. And it's a remarkable document, and it's required reading for all who are ordained to word and sacrament. And it opens with the words, "To take away all occasion for tyranny." Just in case you're not inclined to take it seriously, this is a serious book. Now, the phrase is borrowed from some Reformation-era documents, the Book of Discipline, to be precise, that the church, the emerging Protestant church, used to organize itself. And it was created in opposition to the pyramid scheme that the church of the Middle Ages had become. Now, sure, at the top of the pyramid was the Holy Trinity. Just a little bit under that pyramid was the Pope. And then there was a mess of officious clergy clogging up the center of the pyramid. Guess who was at the bottom? The people of God. And the reformers vowed that would never happen again. And so we have this lovely 21st century document that begins, "To take away all occasion for tyranny." Now, depending on your experiences with the Presbyterian Church in Canada or the church courts, I would leave it to you to decide if the intent of the framers of the Book of Forms has been successful. But I think it's important to know that the church, the Presbyterian Church in Canada in particular, and among others, is organized around a much more equitable principle than the medieval church ever was. And that's only right. That's how it should be. We haven't got it right. We don't get it perfect, and we don't always go far enough. Witness the fact that I spent most of yesterday, a glorious day by all accounts, on a Zoom meeting for Synod that finished at around 2:30 in the afternoon. I'm not sure it wasn't a little bit tyrannical, some of the things that we did to one another on that meeting. That's by way of a public apology. There is, for all our good intentions, a soft hierarchy in the Presbyterian Church in Canada. We do set people apart by ordination, both to the office of ruling elder and teaching elder. And I hold that office, an office which suggests some degree of status. I also have a pretty posh office upstairs, which is cool and lovely and huge by most church standards and barely necessary, but I like it. And so ministers, in the eyes of most people in the church, ministers are up here somewhere, and the elders are in here somewhere, and the rest of us are, oh, what do you know? It looks like a pyramid again. It's not, but it looks like it. We're trying. We try to organize this Presbyterian church of ours around the model of service that Jesus left for us. And this is especially true and we need to be especially careful for those of us who are called and ordained to positions of responsibility and authority, to remember where that power comes from, to remember where we are in the structure. And it's a delicate balancing act, because titles and clothing and office spaces are privileges. And one needs to be careful and mindful of Jesus' words and Jesus' example. Because in the lovely posh office, with my robe of office and my tab collar and all of that jazz, it is easy to forget yourself. Living in the privilege as I do, this week I forgot myself. We had an incident this week. Tuesday was Food Hamper Day, but we also hosted a vaccine clinic in Morrow Hall. And sometime in the space of that 2.5 hours that the building was open in both directions and people were coming and going, and it was delightful chaos. Sometime in the space of that morning on Tuesday, a crime of opportunity was committed. That resulted in the loss of one of our cameras and half of our cordless mic set and a couple of headphones. It was irritating. I discovered the missing items, or at least most of them, on Tuesday night as I was checking the lights before I locked up. Irritating. First call I made was to Dave. Where did you put the camera? Dave put me straight. Then it became maddening, and frankly, it's damned inconvenient. What are we going to do? How are we going to fix it? We have to be online on Sunday morning. It was a difficult Tuesday evening for Dave, too, as I kept calling him and saying, but what about this? And what about that? And what about something else? God bless Dave. It's the kind of thing, though, as we spread the news through the session and other people learned of the incident, it's the kind of event that has people saying, how could this happen to us? And some of you said that to me in just those words. How could this happen here? And I cycled through all of those phases in my reaction to the discovery through Tuesday night. There was even a part of me, this by way of public confession, there was a part of me that foolishly imagined that here at St. John's, of all places, here, we might be immune from this sort of petty mischief. We are St. John's. We're the community church. We're downtown. We're the people with the food hampers and the Project Connect. We do stuff for people. We've long since proved that we are willing and usually able to respond to people in need. And if you're in a bad way, just ask. We'll help you. That's who we are. It's how we want to be known in the community. This should not have happened here. Now this is a 10:30 Tuesday night conversation. This shouldn't have happened here. Doesn't that person know who we are? Doesn't that person know what we do? Why not just ask us for help? By Wednesday morning, I had exhausted my indignation. Because Wednesday I had to get down to work. Sunday was coming after all. And so Wednesday morning I turned my eyes back to the texts for the day. And I met Job, who had been tossing his anger and indignation back and forth with his moderately helpful friends, who suddenly gets a dose of reality from the creator of every single thing. And God, beginning in chapter 38, says, to paraphrase, who do you think you are? Do you know when this happens? Did you raise the mountains? Did you make the sun? Did you do this? Did you do that? Who do you think you are? If you want to argue with me, God says, let's start by declaring our qualifications, shall we? Let's just set the table. This is who I am. 2 magnificently excessive chapters about what God has done and who God is. And then he says to Job, so let's compare notes. Who do you think you are? And Job eventually will be forced to admit that his complaint comes to nothing in the grand scheme of things. And that not only is God able to behave as God pleases, but God can be magnificently excessive whenever God chooses, both in the giving and in the taking back. And with God's mystery and majesty established, by the end of the book, some balance is achieved in Job's tiny little portion of creation. Deep breath. And then I opened the gospel. Make us your equals, say the sons of Zebedee. And as it happens, equal is exactly what Jesus had in mind for his disciples. Just not the kind of equality that James and John were asking for. First of all, the 3-seater throne in heaven, the gift of glory that they ask for, is not Jesus to give. As we learned from Job, God knows God's own mind and will do what seems best when the time comes, and Jesus says as much. The mystery of the how, why, when, and to whom is part of the beauty of being allied with God in a journey of faith. But Jesus doesn't say that. The real twist to this gospel encounter is that the equality on offer is equality in service. Service. Now, I've worked in the service industry. Yes, I have. Nearly 25 years worth. There's some argument to be made that I still work in the service industry, and I'm about to make that argument. But in my previous life, what I knew for sure is that there's something gratifying about having people come in the door with a problem, grumpy, angry, irritable, and in a hurry, and to be able to take time with them and send them away with the problem mostly solved. It's incredibly gratifying. It's not glorious, in case you're wondering. It's not even financially rewarding unless you own the business, because this is a product for profit venture that I'm talking about. But if you're working behind the counter, it's not the sort of thing that sets you up for an easy retirement. It's just gratifying. It makes you feel good. And here was Jesus on this particular Wednesday morning telling me, along with the rest of the disciples, that he is in the service business, and so are we, if we choose to follow him. A business where glory, our glory, is not the goal. A business where entitlement is out of the question. The very notion that I had expressed on Tuesday night, that we here at St. John's ought to be immune from the indignities of real life, the thought that the church is somehow protected from the petty miseries of vandalism, theft, slander, or even the studied indifference that most people under 50 have for religion in general. To imagine, as I did, that we deserve better than to have $600 worth of stuff walk out the door is arrogant beyond belief. It's just another arrogant mistake that we make in the name of religion. To claim a privileged position, as I did in my mind Tuesday night, as the church, to say that the church matters in a way that it really doesn't, is to accept the mantle of tyranny that we're set against as followers of Jesus. To imagine that we ought not to be affected by the desperation that drives people to do things that we blithely call antisocial behavior is to miss Jesus' point entirely. In fact, we are called to open ourselves up to damage by opening our doors to damaged people. And when we do that, we cannot remain unaffected by those encounters with anyone who comes to us for help. Because when we look them in the eye, when we trade words with them, when we hear their stories, we share their humanity. Humanity of those who have been humbled by homelessness, embarrassed by unemployment, crippled by addiction and unspeakable stories of pain and loss. And we are called to be with them and share in their humanity. And you know what that does not get us? Privilege, protection, social status. We don't get any of that stuff that I thought we deserved. What we get is insight. We gain some humanity for ourselves, and we come closer to the mind of God. We, in fact, enter the presence of God. And when we're willing to do that, and when we gain those insights, we will find that the world beyond these walls, the world of those who hasn't decided to follow Jesus, does not appreciate the perspective that we gain when we meet with people who are deeply damaged. That's not a new problem either. Because there was Jesus who broke bread with the tax collectors and sinners, and the authorities, in their arrogant righteousness and with their sense of propriety threatened, the authorities conspired to have him arrested and executed. Why? Because he brought a perspective that was threatening. He brought a perspective from below. And he was killed for it. So no one who pledges to follow Jesus should be surprised when something uncomfortable follows that decision. The surprising thing is when comfort and status and acclaim become the hallmarks of Christianity. Because that is the model that we must dismantle. In fact, it is the model that is in the process, even now, of tearing itself down. Ours is a much humbler path. Whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave or servant of all. Tuesday's theft didn't hurt anyone. It was inconvenient, it was irritating, upsetting. And we've learned a lesson about complacency with the way the building is used and with our new technology especially, but it's just stuff. And guess what? We can afford to replace it. So thanks be to God. What really matters out of Tuesday is that the lesson we've learned is not we'd better be more careful. We will be more careful, but that's not the main lesson. The lesson we've learned, I think, is how can we better serve people whose desperation is so great that they imagine a stolen camera is the best answer to their predicament. That's what service in Jesus' name ought to look like. And what that means is the doors will be open again and again and again and again. What that means is we're going to take more lumps. And we're going to learn more lessons. But we're not going to get more secure and better established in our privileged positions. We will, I hope, learn to be better servants to those in need. Because that's what Jesus did. And we who would follow Jesus are invited to put aside our indignation and ignore the affront to our privilege and get back to work. The work of serving, the work of loving, the work of praising, the work of being followers of Jesus.